Okay, here we are again. 11:21 and 35 seconds. This is the third run through of the game. After the first and second run throughs, you're immediately thrown back into Office 427, and I've still not worked out whether it's part of the game that you're being put back into the beginning, or whether it's just the game refreshes every single time. Anyway.
How wonderful. Stanley was alone. Finally. This is great, he thought to himself. This is what I've wanted all along. I got what I wanted.
Okay, now that message from the narrator is completely different. Normally, it's about finding his colleagues, not being pleased about being on his own. So the game does know that I've come to two different endings and I'm starting a third attempt. By the way, as with a few of my other recent videos, I have a building site opposite my flat, and if you can hear hammering and drilling, that's where it's coming from. It's quite annoying. Okay, let's continue. So this has changed. There's been no suggestion as to what to do from the narrator.
When Stanley came to a set of two open doors, he entered the door on his left.
Okay, now this time, that is what happened last time. And I went right last time. Now, I have something I'd like to try.
This was not the correct way to the meeting room, and Stanley knew it perfectly well. Perhaps he wanted to stop by the employee lounge first, just to admire it.
Okay, so...
Yes, truly a room worth admiring. It had really been worth the detour after all, but eager to get back to business, Stanley took the first open door on his left.
The reason I'm ignoring the narrator is because I have something I'd like to try for this run through, to see what happens. Last time I did this, on the last video, if you watched it,
following directions, it's incredible he wasn't 5 years ago.
I got to this point, and I have a theory. I have something I'd like to try. I'd like to jump from the cargo lift and see what happens. I would like to... Was there 2 vans down there last time? I really would like to... I'd really like to see what happens if I leap off. Now, where could I leap to make it safe? It immediately goes forward. That door over there is open, and I end up there if I get on the lift. Now, if I walk off and land on the van, it's a hell of a drop, and I suspect I'm going to kill Stanley. But I'd like to try and see what happens. So I'm going to try and land on I think that's the highest point, isn't it? I can't direct the lift, and it will go... If it starts going up immediately, I'm going to have to just leap off straight away onto the first van on the right. If it goes forwards and then up, I'm going to try and land on the second van, the van in the middle, or those boxes. Let's see what happens, shall we? So let's get onto this side.
Look,
Okay,
Stanley, I
excellent.
think perhaps we've gotten off on the wrong
Okay,
foot.
here we go.
I'm not sure.
I'm going to land on that van. Ready?
I realize that investing in your trust, but in his eagerness to prove that he is in control of the story and no one gets to tell him what to do, Stanley leapt from the platform and plunged to his death. Good job, Stanley. Everyone thinks you are very powerful.
Okay, so you do die. And here we are. Back. 11:21 again. Okay, now let's see if the game knows that I plunged to my death that time.
Stanley had never seen the office this brightly lit. Was it a sign of something? He hoped it was. He hoped very much that it was.
Yes, again, another new narration. The end is never the end, never the end is never the end, is never the end. Now this is all new as well. Wow, okay. So I think I've exhausted all of my... I can't get through. Awaiting input. Input received. Okay. Weird. I think I've exhausted all my options, taking the right hand path. I've plunged my death, I've followed the...
When Stanley came to a set of 2 open doors, he entered the door on his left.
So I can't survive the fall. I didn't think I was going to survive it, but I wanted to know what happened. But the game does know that I died last time. The more and more you play, the more you suspect you're in some horrible simulation. But is Stanley real, or is Stanley some kind of AI? The second playthrough definitely suggested, well, obviously suggested, we were in some kind of computer-generated
Yet
office.
there was not a single person here either. Feeling a wave of disbelief,
Okay, I'm skipping
Stanley
all that.
decided to go up to his boss's office, hoping he might find an answer there.
Okay, so this is something I've not done before.
Coming to a staircase, Stanley walked upstairs to his boss's office.
On my very first playthrough, I went up. I played the game up to this point the same, but I'm going to go down. See how the narrator likes this. Okay. Is this... There's a bulb. Okay.
But Stanley just couldn't do it. He considered the possibility of facing his boss, admitting he had left his post during work hours. He might be fired for that. And in such a competitive economy, why had he taken that risk? All because he believed
Strange.
everyone had vanished. His boss would think he was crazy.
1,
And then something
2,
occurred to Stanley.
B4.
Maybe, he thought to himself, maybe I am crazy. All of my co-workers blinking mysteriously out of existence in a single moment for no reason at all. None of it made any logical sense. And as Stanley pondered this, he began to make other strange observations. For example, why couldn't he see his feet when he looked down? Why did doors close automatically behind him wherever he went? And for that matter, these rooms were starting to look pretty familiar. Were they simply repeating? No, Stanley said to himself, this is all too strange. This can't be real. And at last, he came to the conclusion that had been on the tip of his tongue. He just hadn't found the words for it. "I'm dreaming!" he yelled. "This is all a dream." Oh, what a relief Stanley felt to have finally found an answer, an explanation. His co-workers weren't actually gone. He wasn't going to lose his job. He wasn't crazy after all. And he thought to himself, I suppose I'll wake up soon. I'll have to go back to my boring real-life job pushing buttons. I may as well enjoy this while I'm still lucid. So, he imagined himself flying and began to gently float above the ground. Then he imagined himself soaring through space on a magical starfield, and it too appeared. It was so much fun, and Stanley marveled that he had still not woken up. How was he remaining so lucid? And then perhaps the strangest question of them all entered Stanley's head. One he was amazed he hadn't asked himself sooner. Why is there a voice in my head dictating everything that I'm doing and thinking? Now the voice was describing itself being considered by Stanley, who found it particularly strange. I'm dreaming about a voice describing me, thinking about how it's describing my thoughts, he thought. And while he thought it all very odd, and wondered if this voice spoke to all people in their dreams, the truth was that, of course, this was not a dream. How could it be? Was Stanley simply deceiving himself, believing that if he's asleep, he doesn't have to take responsibility for himself? Stanley is as awake right now as he's ever been in his life. Now, hearing the voice speak these words was quite a shock to Stanley. After all, he knew for certain, beyond a doubt, that this was in fact a dream. Did the voice not see him float and make the magical stars just a moment ago? How else would the voice explain all that? This voice was a part of himself too. Surely, if he could just... He would prove it. He would prove that he was in control, that this was a dream. So he closed his eyes gently, and he invited himself to wake up. He felt the cool weight of the blanket on his skin. the press of the mattress on his back, the fresh air of a world outside this one. Let me wake up, he thought to himself. I'm through with this dream. I wish it to be over. Let me go back to my job. Let me continue pushing the buttons. Please, it's all I want. I want my apartment, and my wife, and my job. All I want is my life exactly the way it's always been. My life is normal. I am normal. Everything will be fine. I am okay. Stanley began screaming. Please, someone, wake me up. My name is Stanley. I have a boss. I have an office. I am real. Please, just someone tell me I am real. I must be real. I must be. Can anyone hear my voice? Who am I? Who am I? And everything went black. This is the story of a woman named Mariella. Mariella woke up on a day like any other. She arose, got dressed, gathered her belongings, and walked to her place of work. But on this particular day, her walk was interrupted by the body of a man who had stumbled through town talking and screaming to himself, and then collapsed dead on the sidewalk. And although she would soon turn to go call for an ambulance, for just a few brief moments she considered the strange man. He was obviously crazy, this much she knew. Everyone knows what crazy people look like. And in that moment, she thought to herself how lucky she was to be normal. I am sane. I am in control of my mind. I know what is real and what isn't. It was comforting to think this, and in a certain way, seeing this man made her feel better. But then she remembered the meeting she had scheduled for that day, the very important people whose impressions of her would affect her career, and by extension, the rest of her life. She had no time for this, so it was only a moment that she stood there, staring down at the body. And then she turned and ran.
Wow. Okay, so we're back in the office again. That was taking Lee downstairs. I really do apologise about the building site opposite my flat. It's really loud. I'm going to end this run through here and play again when it gets a bit quieter.